And when you are dealing with that kind of personality, basically you're calling them out. Challenging someone like that, like I said, a lot of the time, I don't think these things are fixable. I hate to say it. And normally when the clients are coming to us, as I've been one myself, like I want to do the work. I want to, I know I've been told by coaches, you're not broken, but I certainly felt broken a lot of the time because apparently I was the one with the problem. And I think I was the one that was more seeing that there was a problem and bringing it up and challenging it. And that didn't work. So, some of it is removing those people from our lives.
The Tom Screen podcast is owned and made possible by Ethical Marketing Service. If your business is struggling with Google or Facebook ads, maybe you're frustrated figuring it out or there's a performance issue, Ethical Marketing Service has worked on hundreds of accounts and we can help in this area. We offer a 30-day money-back guarantee. If you would like to find out if we can help, it's a free, no salesy consultation call and the link is in the description. Enjoy the episode. Thomas Green here with Ethical Marketing Service. On the episode today, we have Amanda Kirkland. Amanda, welcome.
Thank you for having me, Thomas.
It is very much my pleasure. Would you like to take a moment and tell the audience a bit about yourself and what you do?
Sure. I am a personal growth coach. I'm located in Ontario, Canada. So we're having this conversation across a big body of water. Actually, my parents were both born in England and grew up there. And I have one sibling living there. Anyway, I spent 35 years in real estate development. A project I'd been working on for 20 years was coming to an end. And I had to decide whether to stay in the business or pivot. I came up with a business idea. I started working with a coach who I thought was more of a business coach, but it turned out I ended up going down a whole, personal growth path. And one thing led to another. I started training with Avalon Empowerment, learning a lot about the unconscious mind, limiting beliefs, negative emotions, not realizing that was all stuff that I had been, I'm going to say, programmed going through life the wrong way. And I had a lot of sort of work and healing to do that I hadn't realized. So while I was doing that, I came to the realization that from what I'd learned about myself and the situations I'd been in and how I'd handled things and the new tools I had, that I couldn't help but not want to share them with other women and some men and do what I can to help them avoid a lot of the struggles that I had in my, late teens and going through to my probably late 40s.
Thank you for the introduction. Now that you're a coach, you've been helping many people. And my question is, what are some of the commonalities that people tend to, what types of problems do they bring you?
My target client is ones that are struggling with toxic and dysfunctional relationships and dysfunctional leadership in the workplace. One of the things that came out of all my work was that there was a pattern of dysfunctional relationships and toxic relationships. And I didn't realize that's what they were until I was on the other side of things. And I was handling every situation the wrong way. I was trying to change the situation, change the people, change the outcome, not realizing that, you can't change other people. And it was more my approach that needed adjusting, and also trying to understand other people's behaviors and not be necessarily so reactive to them. So those are the sort of things, and the clients I'm attracting, the ones that are struggling with those sorts of relationships.
And are those relationships significant other or parental or friendships? What do they tend to be?
They're parental, they're significant other, and they're leadership.
Okay. And from a definitional perspective, because you picked up on something which I was going to ask you anyway, which was what would it look like to be in a dysfunctional or toxic relationship for those that perhaps haven't thought about it before?
Um, the first thing that comes to mind is being told that, you're the problem or you're wrong or you've created something, undermining, negative comments, chipping away at, someone's character, um, super criticism, um, not having your back, not being supportive, making you second guess yourself. Those are just, a few of the characteristics.
And you said that we can't change other people, but we can only change our approach. From a personal growth perspective, how would someone deal with someone who is exhibiting those behaviors?
One of them would be setting personal boundaries in terms of, what sort of behavior you'll accept. The other is, I guess, trying to figure out why another person is behaving that way. They're probably doing it to cover up for their own insecurities and why maybe they have them. So, sometimes going in with maybe a more understanding, empathetic approach. It's not going to work with everybody, but I know I didn't do that, so I probably fueled the fire and fed the beast, so to speak. So when I went in and tried to knock down the guy at the board meeting to his level because he was supposed to be working for us, the client, he just got louder and stood up straighter with me challenging him, and that didn't work. I think it's every situation is unique, and the characters you're dealing with. I mean, some it's a losing battle, and I think sometimes that's just something that we have to, whether we like it or not, accept. And also, the less we make their behavior about us, and like I said, reframe situations. And I think it's just having a different outlook on each situation. I mean, I just catch myself now going, this is what I would have done before. Even the guy at the drive-through this morning, I mean, the order taker, his tone, everything, like raised the hackles on my back. And historically, I would have got to the cash and went, I don't know who on earth you have on there, and I didn't. I was just, you know what? Let it go. And not for just letting people get away with things, but, I spent my life and I knew certain people's behaviors was not right. But when I tried to change it, I was the one that looked like I was the difficult one. And, I know I wasn't. But maybe had I gone into a lot of situations and just let things happen, some of them may not have been as challenging. Some of it is choose your battles. I mean, I'm not going to back down to everything now, and I wouldn't suggest my clients back down everything. But just, changing your perspective and the way you're looking at situations can help. Learning to say no, learning to use the word, I, not you, so that the other person isn't immediately put on the defensive.
Have you given any thought to in this context, the toxic or dysfunctional person, any way that the other person can know whether or not it's purposefully manipulative or whether it's part of their character, almost involuntary? Have you given that any thought?
I have, I'm going to say, debated that with some people, and this is my own perspective. I'm trying to think carefully of how to say it. I think some people's character, it's just in them. I can think of personal experiences, and I can think of, friends I know who believe that somebody's, spending hours plotting and doing all this stuff on purpose. I'm going to say maybe in a couple of instances there is that happening, but I think I can't remember. There's a commercial, and it's "Baby, you're born with it" or something like that. That's the tagline. But I just think it's ingrained in some people's characters, and they're not going to change. So, in terms of like the narcissistic boss, when you are emotionally, going in and trying to plead your case or change the situation, I mean, that's exactly where they want you.
The follow-up question to that is, would it change how you treat them in any way? Because if your approach is the same, it's almost irrelevant. But would your actions change based on if you knew what their intent would be?
Yes, and I don't think I would be as reactive or, poking the bear, so to speak. Not that I was necessarily doing that on purpose, but now knowing that someone checked off 20 characteristics of somebody that was exhibiting, whether it's toxic behavior, narcissistic personality disorder, or something like that. Yeah, you got to tread carefully and also realize that it's a losing battle. I mean, I know with my, in my mother's case, and I estranged myself from my parents and one sibling 10 years ago. Had I tried to even, I tried setting boundaries before I knew what boundaries were. And, they came after me like there was something wrong with me. And if I were to verbally try to do it, again, I'd get a backlash. So, I had to, it evolved. And when I did try to explain why I was removing myself, I was told I had the problem. And it wasn't the problem. I was trying to move away from the problem and, for self-preservation. But had I tried to point out, Mom, you drove a wall between Dad and I, and you won't let him speak for himself anymore. And why can't I take the dogs for a walk with him alone? Victim, martyr, and there would be no rationalizing, no convincing.
The positive, should we say, the right way to go about dealing with that, it's almost the opposite. So if someone gives you boundaries and you want to have them, you want to be in a relationship with that person, that you would listen to their boundaries. Is there any point at which it almost reverts back the other way?
I mean, you're not going to be able to fix everything. And I'm not either suggesting that, someone gives up their soul and their happiness and has to set all these rules, for themselves, or what they're accepting or what they won't accept from somebody else. I mean, that's not the right way to live either.
When you're dealing with someone who's dysfunctional or toxic in that way, oftentimes it doesn't really matter what you say anyway. They're kind of going to do whatever they want to do, and they're not too concerned with how you feel about it. So I don't think there's too much danger of that happening anyway.
No, and in those situations, the workplace where you've got a toxic colleague or coworker, I mean, I stuck out some certain, work situations for a long time, because I, may have liked what I was doing, or the pay was good. And, sometimes you just stick it out for a while. And sometimes, I remember walking to a boss's office years ago, and I loved the job and I loved what I did, but I'm like, I can't do this anymore. He didn't have my back. He wouldn't take care of some really dysfunctional things going on with employees and senior level. And it was affecting my, I guess, mental health and well-being. And, I had to walk away. There's nothing I could do. And I guess, in the sense of the family, there's nothing I could do there. With my oldest, that was my oldest, dearest friend, I went to set a boundary finally. And she walked out.
If you
And it
don't
was
mind me
basically,
asking, what was that boundary?
um, I, she had called me late one Friday night and said her boyfriend had basically told her to leave his condo. Could she stay at my place? And I was like, by all means, okay. And I'd been in a new place about a year and a half. She hadn't visited me yet, although I'd been up to her new place a few times. And she called me on the way down and texted me and then said, sorry, I was on the phone with him, and just all these excuses. And then called a mutual friend of ours who then called me. Anyway, long story short, she finally arrives at my door at, I think, 10 after 1 on a Friday night. And I had an amazing day, had lunch with some great coaches. Something else good had happened. I can't remember what it was. I'd been sitting on the couch relaxing. So all of a sudden, I'm like, not that my place is ever really a mess, but I was quickly tidying up, probably got out of my sweatpants, and kind of put my whole evening on hold. And she gets to the door and I was like, hey, and I gave her a big hug and I'm like, where are your bags? She's like, oh, he's calmed down now. So she proceeded to come upstairs, continue a call with a friend of mine, or our mutual friend. And the whole time I was ruminating. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, I just put my life on hold for 4 hours. This isn't the first time I've done this. And you're turning around and running back to him. So she hung up the phone and I said, and I used the word I, which I now know I shouldn't have, but I was like, I just had a bleeping amazing day. And I'm like, you just hijacked my night. And I said, you can't do that to me again, or I'm not going to let you do that to me again. And she stood up and was like, oh, I thought you were a friend, there when I needed you. You're just like her boyfriend's name at the time. And then she said something like, I always screw everything up, but I don't think she was talking about me. I think she may have been talking about herself. And she basically grabbed her bag and coat, walked down the stairs, slammed the door, and I never heard another word from her. And that's like 19 months ago. And I had a mutual friend, you two were so great together. I just want you back together. And, she, the way she is. She's not like you and I. She's not as strong. And I was like, you know what? Too much. Like, it's just drained me and drained me and drained me. And that was the straw that broke the camel's back. And she had zero respect for like my time. And again, turned it around. Like, I was the bad guy. And even when my friend tried to, get us talking again, it was like I was the one expected to reach out. Well, she never said, I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done that last night. I know you've been there for me. You know the way he is. You know the way I am. Nothing. And we'd had a couple of breakups over the years for various reasons and always got back together. And, you pick up where you left off. And I've been around for her kids since they were, born. And it's sad, but it was a very unhealthy, it was a very one-sided relationship. And that my boundary was basically finally standing up and speaking my voice. When we do that, we're not all, it's not going to resolve the problem. It sometimes has a bad effect. And, I've had to do that with another family member about something at one point in time. And I tried to kind of set a boundary without verbalizing it. And they started to pick up on a shift in my behavior. And, it got resolved. But so it's every situation is different. And so with my clients, I work with them more on a case by case scenario. And like I said, I can look at the situations I was in now and say, this is what I would do. I don't know that it would have changed the outcome, but it certainly would have changed my energetics towards all of it.
Thank you for that example. And I think it highlights a couple of things that maybe we've talked about, and also one thing which I wanted to highlight, which was any sort of critique of a person who is, let's say, disagreeable or not respectful of your boundaries is not allowed. So in that example, I think most empathetic people would be upset about the fact that they had done something to upset you and not just sort of storm out. So I wanted to highlight that. And then the second thing was that if there is a disagreement and then another party is attempting to get it back together again, what they will typically do is speak to the most reasonable person rather than the unreasonable one. And I think that's quite common. Have you seen that that's the case?
I hadn't even really thought of that, to be perfectly honest. That's why I like these podcasts, because there's things that come up that, in the reading and the things I've come across, that's logical. But in the situation where my friend was calling me, yeah, that's probably exactly what it was that she thought I would, especially in the line of work I'm in. Little did she know the reason I was holding my ground is because of what I've learned.
Well, you did mention one thing, which was you would have done it slightly differently. So I'm interested to know, I mean, the outcome, as you say, could have been the same, but what would you have done differently in that example?
I wouldn't have probably been as emotional, because it was, I was really triggered by all of it, and I sat ruminating while she was on the phone. And I think I just would have said, you know what, Brenda, that's what you did, just really isn't respectful of me and my time. And, I just put my whole night on hold for you. And all that said, it wouldn't make a difference. So probably what I would do is not say anything. And after, she left, the relationship dynamics would change after that. And, I would, I should have been able to answer that easier, because I actually have an ebook, and it's 4 Secrets Strong, Gritty Women Need to Know to Rise Above Toxic Relationships. And I have some before and after scenarios. And one actually is that evening. And basically the after is a conversation after the fact, saying, I love you, but from now on, as much as I like our Young and the Restless updates, like, I don't want to hear about the drama anymore. We can talk about all sorts of stuff, but X is off the table and Y is off the table going forward, because you ask for my advice and then you do the opposite. And I just can't take that anymore.
You did mention setting non-verbal boundaries, and I'd like to know, what's an example of that?
For example, with my parents, I stopped going to their country place for, let's say, a Mother's Day or a birthday. And I was like, why don't we just meet in such and such? I never said I wasn't coming there anymore. I just sort of made it a neutral ground. And when those things started to implode, they didn't happen anymore. And I would only meet them, when they came into the city and they were at their friend's house. I would go there for, a glass of wine after work, or I'd invite them to mine, where it was like, I'm going to say, safe territory for me. And those subtle shifts in my behavior, they started to pick up on, and thought that, I was avoiding the place or the farm for whatever reason. And to me, it just wasn't a safe place. But for me to try to explain that to them, I had explained and they wouldn't listen. Yeah, I just sort of physically changed how the interactions happened. I think in other cases, it's, shying away from certain topics of conversation. You may not outwardly state it, but you certainly can, avoid asking certain questions. to engage in the conversation, about certain topics.
I think most people perhaps would prefer the indirect approach rather than maybe the adult conversation of sitting down with someone and saying you haven't treated me very well type thing, especially with someone who's exhibiting toxic behaviors. Do you have a preference of either one of those two, or what do you recommend when someone is in that position and you're coaching them?
I'm very careful about that, just from what you said. There's some people it's too dangerous. And I use that in a very, light way. I'm not saying it's dangerous, it just can be volatile. And when you are dealing with that kind of personality, basically you're calling them out.
Mm.
So it's more, I think adjusting our behavior about how we're going to, what we're going to put up with without saying it. So I don't know if it's, you back out of the room, or it's like, I don't want to have this conversation right now. Challenging someone like that, doesn't work. Like I said, a lot of the time, I don't think these things are fixable. I hate to say it. And normally when the clients are coming to us, as I've been one myself, like, I want to do the work. I want to, I know I've been told by coaches, you're not broken, but I certainly felt broken a lot of the time, because apparently I was the one with the problem. And I think I was the one that was more seeing that there was a problem and bringing it up and challenging it. And that didn't work. So, some of it is removing those people from our lives. That sort of thing doesn't happen overnight.
Well, I appreciate you bringing both the options to the conversation, because I think when someone's in that position, having something to choose from, I think it's going to be very, very helpful to that person. So thank you for that. One of the things that I want to say, specialize in or have expertise in is NLP. And my perception of NLP, I found it really interesting, but I struggled to find practical application for it. What are the ways that you've used it in this particular context?
NLP is really a manual for the brain, and just to show, how and why we do certain things. So a lot of the work I do is with the unconscious mind. So your conscious mind is sort of your neck up 10%, and your unconscious is the neck down, so the other 90%. And your unconscious mind stores in its cellular memory everything that's been ever said to you, done to you, everything you've said, you've done, you've seen. And it creates the filter through which we all see the world. So everyone's experiences are different. Someone will see the wall behind me one way, and someone will see the wall behind me another way, if I were asked to, describe it based on what our experiences are and how we're filtering and processing things. I do, there's a couple of modalities I work with. One of them is a quantum time release, and that is releasing negative emotions like anger, sadness, grief, guilt, fear. And then, the limiting beliefs, things like I'm not smart enough, I'm not good enough, I'm not lovable. But all of that comes after doing a lot of detail work with a client, because the client comes to you with a problem. And it could be, I'm not liked at work. My boss doesn't listen to me. That's just the presenting problem. But we start peeling back down the layers of the onion to get to what the root is. And that's maybe, I'm not heard, I'm not smart enough. And it's unlearning some of these beliefs that we don't even realize we've been carrying around. And those beliefs are controlling how we're acting in the world. So that's, one of the things, the QCP, the quantum change process, that's forgiveness work. One of them is we go through like family of origin and relationships and and do muscle testing to see where there's, I guess, forgiveness that needs to be done. And then we clear that sort of thing. And it's not so much forgiving someone for terrible act. It's just, you made me feel, but also understanding that somebody else is acting a certain way because of something that may have happened to them and may have happened to, generations before them. So that's just, it's like I said, that's sort of a lot of the unconscious and unprogramming and, trying to figure out how things are a problem and why they're a problem.
I can certainly see the coaching side of things would be beneficial in terms of trying to find whether or not you have those limiting beliefs or those people to forgive. So I mean, I don't really see that there's an alternative to that. In terms of if you were aware of it and you wanted to forgive someone or overcoming a limiting belief, what's an example of how you might go about doing that?
We could install strategies so that when you start feeling that limiting belief, you create a strategy to, I'm going to say, replace it with a new belief. The coaching it's not a coming in and have a chit chat. I mean, there's a goal at the end of the day and we work towards that goal, and there is healing and there's new strategies to replace old coping strategies.
I do think that a lot of this stuff, it can be beneficial for pretty much anyone. So I do enjoy the topic, and thank you for bringing it to the episode today. Is there anything that I should have asked you about?
No, I don't think so. I think we've pretty much covered it all in a bit of a discombobulated way this morning.
Well, if someone wants to get in touch with you and do this self work, where do they go?
You can find me on Instagram and Facebook at Amanda Kirkland Coach, or my website is amandakirkland.com. And I have an introductory 30-minute get to know you call where, we can have a chit chat, see where you're at, where you want to be, and whether or not it would be the right fit to discuss doing some work together.
Well, I think that would be highly beneficial for someone to go ahead and do that. So, and Amanda, thank you for being a great guest today.
Thank you for having me, Thomas.